Good morning. It's a real honor to be here. You will see me sliding backwards and forwards because I tend to walk and talk. Emily and Nick, I think, have just, with Doug, who's walking towards me, just done a fantastic job of explaining many of the issues where we are. I run a technology company, so we're one stage back, and I'm looking at Bernard in the front who asked the question and thinking, we'll come back to that question, Bernard. I know you have views. So why am I here? I went to Corporate Jet Investor in Miami, and a shameless plug for Alistair and Louisa. That was the first time I had been to that event for many years, and it was a real good eye-opener of where things are in the US industry. And you can hear by my accent, although I work in Sweden, I'm pretty British. And based here in Europe. So it's always good to go across to what is the largest market for business aviation in the world and take the pulse. One of the things that surprised me when I was there was hearing from several new entrants on the operator side describe, when asked around what their business model was going to be, chose to describe themselves as the Uber for business jets. Now, I think Doug just expressed a view on that. Emily expressed a view on that. I share the same view. I don't think we're going to see an Uber for business jets. But I want to dive in and come back to some of the learnings and reflections that I think we can take from it. I have to do double click here. Right, okay. So it's a very laudable goal in terms of trying to apply some of the lessons that have been learnt with Uber. And I think we've already seen some developments in our industry, whether we're talking about there have been an emergence of digital-first brokers and charter sales departments in operators. You've seen member programs redesigned to try and introduce supply to customers in a new way. And you've also seen a slow but steady shift in terms of marketplace providers of data, like Avanode, and the emergence of quite a plethora of software providers connecting the tissue of data that flows between players. So a lot has fallen into place. I better say a little bit around myself and Avanode. I'm from a finance background, but I worked a long time in commercial aviation before making the move in technology, and I've been in business aviation with Avanode over the last more than a decade now. Avanode itself as a platform, you can read the numbers. I often get the question, are you still bigger in Europe than the US? No, we are kind of very equal size, if not somewhat larger in footprint in the US now. The real key number on there isn't the aircraft, isn't the number of members. It's the data flow that's the last number. In any one 24-hour period, we have over 4 million data hook requests going backwards and forwards from our system into operators on schedule, pricing, amenities, and back into, on the other side of, into brokers requesting at what is available in the market. That is a lot of data flowing. We used to do that number over the course of 60 days, and over time, it's grown to just be within 24 hours. So Bernard's question around digitization of our industry, it's underway. Maybe not as fast as we would like to see it, but it is underway. I'm not going to win, or we're not going to win any prizes for marketing for our Uber Jet here, but why haven't we seen it? You could just go, the market is just not big enough. That could just be the end of the discussion. Here we are, we've had 3 days very much focused on our industry. It's very easy to think it's bigger than it is. When you put it alongside commercial aviation, we're just a small blip. So we don't have that density of being able to pull off what is really a fundamental requirement for an Uber. We also don't have a cost structure where you can just have a car and a driver, and the incremental cost of servicing additional passengers is very low. I think we've already heard the quote this morning, we are an extremely capital-intensive industry. We are, plus fuel, plus pilots, plus maintenance. It is a hard industry that we operate in, and the economics of additional supply are very difficult. And it's also, just because you've got more people requesting through an app, in Uber it brings more drivers, more vehicles onto the market. That's pretty difficult to achieve with a limited supply of aircraft in the same environment for business aviation. So I don't believe we're going to see. One of the other elements, though, is investment. Digital is very easy to talk about, super expensive to do. I'm not sure how many in this room run IT budgets, have software development in their companies. It used to be, why don't we just build an app for that? It's an expensive undertaking, because building a technology platform, you don't just build it for a one-off usage. You're committed to supporting that through security updates, modernization. It's an expensive business, as many of you will have learnt. So I don't believe we have the economics that make it work. But what I do think we have, and I've been talking too much, is around, there are those learnings we can take. So it's all about the experience. There are many things we can take from the Uber experience. You've got that seamless user experience, the intuitive, friendly design of the platform that you just know how to use it. Real-time convenience. There is, I stood in Phoenix, arriving at an airport last week, straight to the app collection point, and I knew what I was going to get. I could track my vehicle all the way in. So you have transparency, you have global scalability, and constant updates about what's taking place around your journey. There's a lot for us as an industry to pull in. One of the other things that goes hand in hand with I want to be the Uber for business aviation is the idea that you're going to knock the brokers out. And I think this is another one of these fallacies for our industry. I'll declare my bias. I think the broker-operator model of distribution for our industry, it's going to be super difficult for that not to be the sustaining model, because we are such a fragmented industry. I think here we are in London. Anyone looking for a flight out of Heathrow, you'll probably go look at British Airways first. Like I was last week in Phoenix, you're away from your home market. If you're a Brit over looking for demand, you'll go jump on the Expedias, the Booking.coms. What they are travel agents. What they are brokers in our parlance. And what they are giving is reach. They are enabling airlines to sell in places where nobody has heard of them. And that's the same challenge we have, I believe, in our industry. I've talked about this, but the devil is in the data. Connecting data across our industry, we have made great strides in flows of data. That number I talked about at the beginning is not just our number, it belongs to every software provider that we connect into. There is an awful lot of data running through. What is critical is the right data is coming from the operator to the broker in order for a trip to take place, for the right trip to find the right aircraft. Fast, accurate availability, missing data delays sales. We all know this. Lost deals. Clear pricing equals smoother transactions. The easier it is to explain what you're getting for a customer, the easier it is to close the deal. Rich aircraft details build confidence around what you are chartering and what the experience you're going to be taking. The greater that transparency, the fewer client queries you need to run. And overall, the more you can get the flow of data running for communication, the better everyone can ensure that the client is supported. The good news is we have got change underway, and it's running in 4 areas. And I'm going to dive in on these. I've been at a tech conference yesterday, so I have learnt to say I should double-click on everything, which seems to be the new parlance. So let's take the first of these, quoting automation. When we look across the industry today, and yes, there are exceptions, and I can see some of them in the room, but what you see is a very manual, quote-driven process. That lack of data and information flowing through a manual process creates inefficiencies. Those static models or data means everybody is missing out in opportunities and missing out in foregone revenue. The Uber lesson was around, you take an algorithm, you apply it that's matching rides to trips, and you do that to allow driver autonomy. The challenge, as was described in the last session, is for our industry, we have ultra-high net worth individuals who really do demand that personal and value that personal relationship. So the goal shouldn't be that we're going to get to the app that replaces everything as Uber has, but the goal should be that tech-assisted sales and customer support is really reinforcing our industry. There's so much that we can pick up. Dynamic pricing. There is so much on this area where we as an industry, particularly on the charter side, there's a lot of pricing that takes place that does not make sense. Pricing that is taking place for maybe cash flow reasons, maybe opportunist pricing. Pricing that is taking place because there's only a mixed visibility about really what's going on in the market. Take someone like Uber. Outside, I'm not sure what's happening to surge pricing with the police guarding us here, but I bet you Uber knows in this area there is additional constraints, and we are seeing surge pricing coming in. That's real-time data on real-time demand, on real-time availability, leading to the optimization of the revenue model for everyone concerned. And I think this is an area where, again, we have more to do, but there are many players who are beginning to do more in this. It is regulatory costs, owner preferences for managed aircraft. This is all going to come into play. It makes it very complex. But as I'm going to come to, there are things that are going to support this change. Here's another area. It's come up, or touched upon a number of areas. KYC, KYB. It's an area that we don't really like to talk about. For Uber, when you get in Uber, you have actually gone through KYC. It's know your customer, but Uber is taking that from the fact that you paid on a credit card and relying on the fact that the credit card has actually validated who you are. In our industry, with 100,000 trips taking place all around the world, KYB and KYC have increasingly become a super important area, and a super important area to get right. I think many sales teams will just see the additional compliance checks as something that slows down sales and gets in the way of really facilitating a service to a customer. But it needs to be seen as a source of reassurance and as a valuable tool. It's also, if I think about PII, which is personal information that's being exchanged. I would hate to do a show of hands to say how many of you are operating in an environment where you've got personal information that's flowing between emails, between customer and yourselves, or between companies doing business to secure. If that's the situation, in this world of privacy and regulation, you have an enormous risk. You may not realize it, but that's a risk that's building and comes with quite steep fines on it. The answer is super simple in terms of data, training staff around data privacy, around ensuring that those data flows are protected end to end. But it's, again, we have grown up as an industry, very manual, transitioned from fax to email, but we carry some of those habits with us as we go forward. Last one, I think I can go super quickly because I think this was covered in the last. We are an industry that needs to provide a very tailored, bespoke service. You know, many of you know in the audience far more than I do that each client has very different and demanding needs. This is an area where an application like Uber doesn't do so much in terms of it's not going to serve you up your particular car type, but it has categorized. So the personalization lesson isn't so great here, but the personalization lesson from other industries applying CRM, collecting and sharing information on customer preferences is super strong. I warned you at the beginning that I work in technology, so it wouldn't be a technology speech in 2025 unless I mentioned AI. There's an awful lot of hot air being blown here. I had the delight of seeing a company called Databricks, who behind the scenes is running many of the large flows between Azure, between AWS, other areas. And they get to see what people are doing with data. They tell me of everybody claiming to be working in AI, about 2% real AI or generative AI at the one end, 98% is really around machine learning of data. And all I would say to you in this audience, if you're not on it, if you're not using, don't worry. We are very early days. And this is a discussion around any of you in the audience that's been through mobile revolution will recognize that change. Cloud, for those of you who are a little older like myself, will recognize that change. This is just another one. Search engine optimization is dying quickly on us. AI optimization, where do you appear in ChatGPT? That is gaining ground very rapidly as we talk. My message for everyone in the audience is think about it two ways. Think about the applications you already use, like Salesforce, that already have AI tools coming in, and make sure you leverage them. But the other thing you need to think about is each of you are sat on data that you didn't previously know what to do with. Those emails, those voice recordings, those video demos, they all contain what we would call unstructured data. It's data that you could never access before. But in a world of AI, that data can be extracted and actually made into very useful, actionable data. And for a small, bespoke industry like ours, that's the type of message and capability that I believe if we leverage will really be a strong capability. Because my closing message is, I sit, as I warned you at the beginning, in terms of in a company that's right in the middle of those data flows. What collectively we need to be working towards is the right trip gets the right aircraft. That's how we maximize both in terms of our industry success. That is also how we maximize the service and the provision that we provide to our customers. And that we have ample road ahead with the tools that are coming through, not to emulate what Uber has done, but take out key elements and apply it with tools that are available. And at that, Alistair, I'll close. Are you going to let me off the stage?
Do we have any questions? Yes, Charles, here you go.
Thank you for that, Oliver.
I'm so glad I don't get to throw that.
So you rightly pointed out that this industry has enormous costs. It's a very expensive service to deliver. And you and others are on this journey to make data work to the advantage of the consumer and the service providers. Can you see a day where if you make enough progress with the digitization, the cost of delivery could be spread enough that there's a true breakthrough in how accessible private aviation is? I'm not saying that it would ever become the sort of Uber level, but where the market expands enough that, you know, the working poor like me could contemplate making trips.
So I said at the beginning, it's a good question, that I worked in aviation. And I worked in aviation at the point where companies like BA were competing against the Ryanair. And at that point in time, cost of sale, which is your cost of actually selling to a customer with all of your agency fees, your sales, your marketing, that was about 20% for most airlines. It was quite a major block of cost. And so restructuring that with the kind of digital revolution and the booking online really enabled that cost to be squeezed down to 6 or 7 points. And that 10% was quite a large saving. The challenge for the airlines was that you also had it followed with a price war, which meant that that just funded the price war. So there's some previous experience on that, but I think the direct answer to your question is no, because I don't believe that distribution of data is fundamentally going to change the cost structure of our industry. I do believe it enables us to be more efficient. Avanode, we've been around for a number of years. One of those things I think that we've played a role in the industry is like the shift from paying for both legs into one-way pricing, because we've enabled the distribution, and so different operators over time have taken advantage of that. Yes, the previous models do apply, but it's led to an efficiency step up in utilization, but it's still not enough to change the dynamics of the industry. So I don't think we're going to see a fundamental shift.
Okay, let's do some quick fire questions. Bernard is asking, is there a difference in progress or speed of digitization between the USA and Europe?
I think I see so what I see in the States, and particularly at the moment, is quite an application of capital again in terms of funding for ideas. And each one of those, and we in this room over the years have seen various well-funded entrants come in and make large investments into different areas, including digital. And I again see that in the States, but I don't believe fundamentally they're in a different place to where we are in Europe. I think, Bernard, as I look you right at the front here, I think we have different constraints in Europe in terms of back to some of the regulation issues that we have to also mix in with pushing forward with changes to platforms and data, because we are pretty regulated on the leading edge here in Europe on that side, although California is pretty much the same now.
You've got a nice comment from someone going, thanks for a tech presentation, I understood. Diego's asking, if the market was to ask for it, what do you think are the missing building blocks for automated quoting and sales?
It's a good question. So I think if you take any other shopping experience that you have, take an Amazon, for example. I know it's an extreme example from a completely different industry, but you have this whole concept of a good arriving in a shopping basket that you're essentially checking out with a very clear set of terms and conditions associated with it. I think if you systematically think of the challenge we have, we've got to develop those same stepping stones in order to deliver for our customers and our industry. I think each of those is going to look very different because there's no way you're going to get the on-app seamless experience that you have, but those are the elements that we need to put in place. And we have some of them, but in many ways a lot still relies on quite a traditional quoting approach.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.